Hi, I'm Lisa Hayden with Channel 6 Central Kentucky TV, community focus on Washington County. And today we have a Washington Countian with us who we have the honor of interviewing today, who is from Springfield but now lives in Atlanta?
Yes,
Yes.
in the Atlanta area.
Dr. Dixie Snyder. Is that junior or the
Junior.
junior?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Because a lot of people here would remember your father.
They sure would.
Yeah. Now, I grew up in Bardstown, so I did not get the opportunity to know your dad. But I know he was a doctor here for a long time.
Right.
And treated a lot of people here. Had his office up on Covington?
Walnut Street.
Walnut, yes. And so, now Dr. Snyder, he was a doctor here and practiced medicine until he died when?
1987.
Okay, okay. So,
Yeah, he came here after World War II. He graduated from medical school, the University of Louisville, in 1940, and went into the service in 1942, I guess it was, yeah, in 1942, and he got the Purple Heart, got a Silver Star for heroism, and came to Springfield. He was born in Nelson County, out near Bloomfield, Kentucky, on Plum Run.
okay.
And had 5 brothers and sisters, and he practiced something you don't hear much about anymore, general practice,
Right.
general medicine, and had a solo practice, which is also becoming unusual, up on Walnut Street, and took care of people for all their medical problems, although along the way, and I don't remember the year, he had a heart attack, and they told him to slow down, and so his slowing down was reading x-rays in the morning over at the hospital in Lebanon instead of seeing patients in the morning. and he got training once a year up at the University of Michigan in order to have the skills to be able to read the x-rays properly. So that's what he did, and apparently he not only did it well, but made people so warm toward him that they told me about it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always heard a lot of nice things about your dad. And your mom, what was her name?
Her name was Martha Blythe Snyder, and she was from Graffinsburg, Kentucky, which is up close to, between Shelbyville and Frankfort.
Yes.
And she was a nurse, and they met down at Louisville General Hospital, because that's where she trained as a nurse, and that's where he, of course, did his internship. And so they got to know one another and got married before he went off to fight in World War II. So she came here and helped out in the office initially, and I had a babysitter, but then she started taking care of the children. I had 2 sisters that came along after me.
So you were the oldest,
Mm-hmm.
and then there were 2 sisters.
Right.
And do they...
One of them lives here, Jane Lewis, and she was an elementary school teacher.
Well, I didn't know that was your sister.
Oh yeah, she's my sister.
Yeah. I mean, I've known Jane forever.
Yeah.
But, you
And
know...
our sister Carol is up in Ohio, and she's
Okay.
a school teacher too. So
Okay.
a retired school teacher now.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, we have some strong roots here in Washington County.
And you grew up here.
I did.
And then you went to, I suppose, Springfield High School, or what?
I did.
Okay.
Springfield.
Okay.
No, there was no Washington County High School then. Springfield, Willisburg, Mackville.
Okay. And then you went on to college at
Western Kentucky.
Oh, well, Western, of course.
It was Western Kentucky State College then.
Okay.
But that's where my dad went to undergraduate too, and I looked around at other places, but I thought that was the best fit for me, and it worked out wonderfully. And I got accepted to medical school at the University of Louisville, and I was so fortunate that I graduated first in my class from the medical school, which made me eligible to go do an internship at Washington University, Barnes Hospital in St. Louis, and be a part of a group of 12 interns from all over the country, from Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Johns Hopkins and places like that. And that was a challenging situation, but a very rewarding one. And I wound up getting most of my training there, although one year I went to Vanderbilt for some special training. And then I went back and did a fellowship in immunology and allergy at Washington University, and thought that that would be my career in academic medicine and be an immunologist and so forth. But the Vietnam War was still going on. And I was, again, fortunate in that the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, each called me and said, instead of going into the regular service, military service, would you be interested in joining the Commissioned Corps of the Public Health Service and work here at NIH or CDC, depending on which call it was? And I picked the CDC position because it sounded more interesting to me. And once I got there, I realized this is for me. This is where the Spirit or whoever has been guiding my life so far is telling me that I need to go. And I think I learned that first here at Springfield High. Prof. Robertson, who taught us psychology, did various tests, one of them being an IQ test and another one being an aptitude test. And he told me after I took that test, he said, you're a scientist, a science-oriented person, but it's more social science rather than laboratory-type science. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But I'm interested in chemistry, so I majored in chemistry in Washington, at Western. But then, in retrospect, I see that he was on the mark, that public health is a lot more social science, if you will, than it is, working in laboratories or sitting in the clinic seeing patients one-on-one. It's a very different enterprise in that they're making policy for recommendations for vaccines or what have you. And for me, that was the right place to be. It just energized me to be able to work with people to formulate a new policy and see it implemented and see people benefit from it.
And so those kinds of things were like immunizations, flu vaccines, and I think you've gotten some awards from them in relation to some of the things that you implemented.
Kind of projects, yeah.
Right.
So,
such as?
Well, such as one of the largest ones was in the early 80s, the United States had the AIDS epidemic, the HIV epidemic that appeared on the scene, and of course CDC and the whole medical establishment had to energize themselves and orient themselves to addressing this new problem. And one of the problems that appeared was an increase in tuberculosis cases, because people who had this infection, and even today who have it, are very susceptible to developing tuberculosis. And so one of the things that we needed to do was adjust our policies at CDC about how you prevent and treat tuberculosis to be able to address this new problem. And so, and we were challenged by the director of CDC to come up with some plan. And so I spearheaded the development of a plan called Strategic Plan for Elimination of Tuberculosis. And then a few years later, we had a new problem that showed up primarily in New York City with drug-resistant tuberculosis. And so we modified our plan and addressed the problem of multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. So those are just, you know, some examples. There were other examples where after I worked in the director's office at CDC, I had responsibility for the immunization recommendations. And so every one of those new vaccines, especially that appeared on the scene, had to be evaluated and a policy made, recommendations made to the state health departments about what vaccines should be used and what age groups and so forth. And one of the most rewarding things I did in terms of policy, I felt, was working with my own team at CDC and with the people at the Food and Drug Administration to fortify, and this was finalized in 1998, to fortify cereal grains with folic acid, because we had learned that if women take folic acid around the time they become pregnant, it reduces the likelihood of having a serious defect of the nervous system called spina bifida. And by fortifying the cereal grains, then people don't have to remember to take a vitamin to get their folic acid, which is a vitamin. They can just eat cereal grains, and we documented then that neural tube defects were decreased after this fortification by 35%. So it's a success, and yes, there was an award, but the biggest reward was the feeling inside of having accomplished something with the folks on my team and at FDA. So yeah, there were a lot of opportunities like that at the CDC, which is why I stayed there.
Yeah. Well, because you're trying to make things better all the time, which of course doctors do anyway, and so, but that was your niche, so that was great. Well, now, so you stayed there for, now, when did you and Fran, a Washington County girl, get together? Was that before you went off to school, or?
Yeah, so we got together before I had a driver's license. So I was actually working on the farm of Scott Lanham, who had a farm out off Bloomfield Road, some more land out at Tick Creek, but I worked out there, and he had a couple of sons that were near my age, Jimmy Lanham and Freddie Lanham. And so because I was working with them on the farm, they invited me to go out one weekend. Well, it turns out that Fran Fenwick was in the group of people going over to Lebanon to enjoy themselves. And so
where were you all going? Club 68?
No, Jane
Club
Todd.
Jane Todd.
Yeah.
That was those were the days.
Yeah, so that's how I got to know her.
And before you even had a driver's license.
Yeah, before I had a driver's license. So we dated on and off, and finally got engaged and got married after my freshman year in medical school. So she She worked hard to keep us going.
Did she go to Western with you?
No.
Okay.
No. She went to
stayed-
St. Catherine
Right.
and started working at Hayden Coal and Oil
Okay.
as a bookkeeper.
Okay.
She hadn't stopped doing that kind of stuff either.
She's still
either as
doing-
a volunteer. Well, now it's a volunteer thing. But,
Uh-huh. But she did bookkeeping
she
for a long
did
time?
bookkeeping, yeah. She did
Yeah.
bookkeeping at Superior Paper in Louisville and
So that,
American Trailers when I was assigned by CDC to Oklahoma for a while.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
So wherever you lived, she'd get a bookkeeping
she'd get a
job.
bookkeeping job, yeah.
And so Fran, of course, I didn't know Fran. She's, Pat Fenwick Rayburn.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Wood
And Maryland.
and Marilyn
Boone.
are, yeah. I've known them all the years I've been in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And but Fran, I guess, probably wasn't here when I came to Springfield. So she'd probably already left with you.
Yeah, maybe so.
And that's how I got to Springfield, was with a fella who was from Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then so you and Fran went on, stayed in Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to think when you said Scott Lanham, I was thinking. And it dawned on me, I don't know him, but some of his younger brothers. But Joe Scott is what
Yeah, he was one of the sons.
his
one of
sister
Scott's sons.
Connie calls him, and that's
Yeah.
how I know his name.
Yeah, right.
Joe Scott,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah,
and-
Connie was one of the ones there.
yeah.
I
yeah.
stayed with them sometimes, overnight, because when you're working out there,
You were working on the farm.
yeah, when you're working, you're working,
Yeah.
And
You
with
probably
the long day is in the summertime.
you probably did tobacco planting and
Yep,
all of that.
tobacco cutting.
Cutting, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cutting and hauling hay.
And here you all are down there at the CDC putting out warning, or no, that would be the, I guess, the Surgeon General, but through you all, would that be about cigarette smoking?
That's us.
That's you, okay,
Yeah.
that's what, okay.
I mean, we usually give, if they're interested, we usually give the information to the highest level person who's willing to take the time and feels comfortable talking about it, just because it seems usually to carry more weight. So if you got the director of your agency or the Surgeon General, or what have you, or even in some cases the president, or maybe a senator from it depends on the situation. But yeah, but the people who would do the work on that would be in what we call the Environmental Health Laboratory, and they're people who are very competent, who have for years studied a variety of things, including years ago they were the ones who looked at the ingredients in cigarette smoke. And here are, what are the things that are causing people to get cancer, or what are the things that precipitate chronic lung disease. And so those are the same people who have, usually the ones, they've developed even the techniques for detecting this stuff. That's how creative they are. So,
Wow.
and when it takes a while, like it is with the vaping, people kind of get impatient. I remember how impatient people were in 1976 when there was this outbreak in Philadelphia. You may have heard that these veterans up there, legionnaires,
Right, Legionnaire's disease, yeah.
the American Legion was
Yeah.
meeting, and nobody knew what was causing the problem. And it took a couple of friends of mine, Charles Shepard and Joe McDade, about 6 months to grow this new organism that nobody knew about. So sometimes it just takes a while. So I have confidence that the people who are working on the vaping to figure out what is, causing this lung disease will eventually come up with the answer, but sometimes you just have to be patient, because it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of smart people to figure these complicated things out.
Yeah. So, and oh gosh, we could talk all day on some of these subjects. Daggone, I'm sorry we don't have all day, because I could ask you a lot of questions. And, you know, there's been all this controversy about vaccinations, and my children are always talking to me about that because they have little infants. And, you know, we could go on and on, I know.
Well, that's been a big issue for me during my career. When I moved from being a tuberculosis expert at the beginning of my career at CDC into the office of the director, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of my responsibilities was to oversee this advisory committee for immunization practices. And it became very controversial, as you said, because some groups of people and even some scientists started raising questions about vaccines. And to try to fairly address people's concerns, we started intensifying our work. Although FDA does some of this work, we started intensifying our work with vaccine safety and doing various vaccine safety studies. And it was decided that that group shouldn't be a part of the same group that was advocating for people to take vaccines, because it might be viewed as a conflict of interest. So the bottom line is they put the vaccine safety office in my office.
Oh.
So I had responsibility for it for about 8 years. And so I'm very familiar with the vaccine safety issues that came up during that whole time, including the notorious measles study that wasn't measles, but the guy claimed to have measles in the tissues of some people who had gotten sick after receiving the measles vaccine. So,
but that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case, and I mean, we did document some adverse events, and I'm proud of having played a role in that. For example, we knew that the oral polio vaccine, which is so easy to take, unfortunately caused, when it was being used, 7, 8, 9 cases of vaccine-associated polio, which means that they got their polio from the vaccine.
Yeah.
Okay? And that was continuing on, and when we had a lot of polio around, people thought that risk is, you know, it's worth it because we don't want natural polio circulating in the community. But by the time I had gotten on the scene here, the people were starting to ask questions: should we use injectable polio vaccine instead of this oral polio vaccine? Because the injectable is dead virus, whereas the oral polio vaccine was live, so-called attenuated, so it's not as disease-causing as the normal polio virus that circulates, the natural polio virus that circulates. So it was very controversial, though, because many of the doctors especially were worried that if we stopped this easy oral polio vaccine, that parents wouldn't accept another injection for their children. But we changed the policy, and it turns out that parents didn't refuse the vaccine. They continued to take it, and there's no more vaccine-associated polio. There was another quick story about the first vaccine that came on the market for rotavirus, which causes diarrhea, especially in young children and infants. And unfortunately, the first rotavirus vaccine that came on the market, we learned several weeks after it had been released that it was causing a blockage in the intestine, a particular kind called intussusception, but it's just a blockage. But that's serious, and many of the children with it were having to be operated on. So we quickly made the announcement that we're suspending our recommendation to use this vaccine. And because of CDC's reputation, doctors quit using it, and the health departments quit using it. Later, a better rotavirus vaccine was put on the market. So, you know, I think the point I'm trying to make is that we didn't just recommend vaccines.
Yeah.
We recommended stopping vaccines when
Right.
when the harm was greater than the benefit. So
Yes, yes. Well, gosh,
there you go.
you've been involved in a lot of things.
A lot of things.
And because of all your hard work and years of service, I call it, and how many years was that with the CDC?
With CDC, I worked for CDC in one capacity or another for 40 years.
Wow. So, you recently retired?
I retired in 2013.
Okay.
I had to have surgery on my back, and took me about a year and a half to recover from that, because I have a lot of metal in my back because of a complicated thing I won't get into now, but any event. But I have 5 grandchildren, and I have a lot of work at my church, and I teach English as a second language to people who come to this country and want to learn, especially a lot of moms want to learn, who speak Spanish, want to learn what their children's homework assignments are and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have about 61 students. So
Oh gosh.
yeah.
And these five grandchildren?
Yeah.
And they live in the Atlanta area? You have how many
Two of them
children?
live in the Atlanta area. I have 2
Okay.
children, a son
Okay.
who lives in Houston,
Okay.
and a daughter who lives in the Atlanta area.
Okay.
And my son has 3 boys, and my daughter has 2 boys. And nobody has any granddaughters for us, but the grandsons are great. So
And now, so your son, is he Dr. Dixie?
no, he went to Sewanee, University of South, for 3 years, and decided his philosophy major wasn't really taking him where he wanted to go. I wasn't sure where he wanted to go. He joined the Marines, was in the Marines for 5 years as a navigator, and got a job with an outfit called Air Routing International in Houston. And they are part of Rockwell Collins now.
Okay.
And soon will be a part of United Technology, which is a huge conglomerate. And he works now on, they service people who own or fly or lease jets to fly internationally. Because those folks
Okay.
have to have flight plans filed. They have to have fuel. They have to have security services and so forth.
Is that
So-
like the movie stars and the VIPs?
Yeah, so Will Smith is one of their accounts. Walmart is one of their accounts. so,
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So, then you are being inducted into Western Kentucky University's Hall of Fame.
Hall
That's-
of Distinguished Alumni, they
Oh,
call it.
okay.
HODA, I'm told.
Okay. And you also, I think, you've received some other awards. Do you mind elaborating a little on those?
Well, I received many awards at CDC from the Public Health Service. The highest award I received is called the Secretary's Distinguished Service Medal, and that's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So one of the cabinet members gives you that award. Then I got afterwards, I got awards from New York Lung Association, the Oklahoma Lung Association, and so various organizations like that. Since I've been retired, I got an award from Emory University from their School of Public Health as a distinguished alumnus, and an award from the University of Louisville, another distinguished alumni type award, and then the University of Kentucky, which I never went to, but knew some people there, inducted me in 2009, I think it was, into the Kentucky Public Health Hall of Fame. So,
Oh,
so
that's great.
People have been very nice about recognizing things I've done, which I appreciate very much. But I feel like I know a lot of other people at CDC who also have contributed a lot, and hopefully they get their recognition too.
Yeah. Well, we like to honor our Kentuckians now. And we're happy that you are one of them. And so I think while you're in, no, Western's not until October.
Right.
During homecoming
Yes.
weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, but are you going to U of L for something? Or
I was just there. It was the 50th reunion of my medical school class.
Okay.
And I think they said there were 17 of us. I didn't count, but somewhere around 20 who were able to show up. And according to the report, out of a class of 98, only 10 had passed away. So I guess we're a lucky class so
I'd
far.
say so, yeah.
But it was good to see all the people and find out what they'd done and what they were up to.
And what about Springfield High? Do they ever have a class reunion?
Yes, 2011
Okay.
they had a class reunion.
Uh-huh. And that would have been from grade school, how many years?
From grade school?
From when were they celebrating their
Well, that was 50th.
the 50th?
Yeah.
In 2011. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
61.
Okay.
Class of 61.
Okay. So and so you do get back to Springfield and visit, and so when I saw all your family, well, your in-laws having lunch one day at Mordecai's, you know, and that's when I said you weren't there, but I know they get together, the Fenwicks, like once a month for lunch. And I said, that is great.
Yeah, we went out to Idle Hour Park yesterday.
Okay.
I say we, you know, I've always felt a part of that family.
Well, you've been with them a long time.
Yeah.
You and Fran have probably been married how many years?
53.
53. Well, congratulations. And congratulations to you on all your awards.
Thank you.
And we're just so happy that you could be on here today. I know, you know, we rearranged schedules, so I told Gary that it was, you know, we had to try to get you on while you were in town.
I appreciate it.
So,
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so I want to thank you
you
very
so
much for being here today, and congratulations to you
Thank you for having
and
me.
to all your family. So, yeah, so thanks.
My pleasure.